Hey, Lloyd.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Ruby.
Good morning, Ruby.
Good morning.
Let me be in space this morning. Looking out over this beautiful world.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, maybe I'll find a cooler background. Let's see.
All right, it's my messy desk.
Hey, Mike.
Morning, Michael.
Morning.
All right. All right.
Morning, Danielle.
Danielle, good morning.
Good morning. I always forget you have to like register each time. So
Yeah, that's a frustration. Morning, Sally.
Morning, Sally. Morning,
Morning,
Hanalea.
Hallelujah.
Hey, everyone.
I apologize as the new guy. I didn't bring like donuts or something. I'm not sure how this works.
It's
No
tough
virtual
to-
donuts.
Tough to share donuts in these virtual meetings. But I appreciate the thought.
Yeah. It's the thought that counts.
I'm sure those are better on all of our waistlines.
Yes. I tried a virtual diet, but it doesn't do too well. I haven't noticed.
I'm going to try that one, a hybrid diet, both virtual and in person.
Yeah. We'll give it a few more minutes here. Looks like we're really short on committee members today. I know Chris is not going to be with us. He emailed me. And I think Janine and Tracy might both be out of town because I've gotten out of office messages from them.
Right back.
No problem. Good morning, Alicia. Good morning, Shante.
Good morning.
Lloyd, are we still expecting Ashley Taylor Jacobs to join us?
I don't believe so, but I have some information to share regarding that issue.
Okay, all right. All right, well, I'll tell you what, it's 10:04 a.m. and I think we should go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to the April 14th meeting of the Performance Management Committee. Hope everybody is well. We do have one guest with us here this morning. So Michael, if you would take a moment just to introduce yourself, who you are and what brings you to the meeting this morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So my name is Mike Mertzke. I'm with Veterans Bridge Home, and we manage the Central Carolina region of the NC Serves Network, which is part of NC Care 360. Well, it's the veteran-facing side of the NC Care 360 system. I'm the Community Network Director for the Triangle area, so the 10 counties around the Triangle. And housing is actually one of the, well, it is the biggest thing that comes across our network as veteran issues. So we're just trying to make sure that we're partnering, in the community to best, help meet those needs. So I'm the new guy on the team, so I'm just trying to figure out how best we can support and, so glad to be here.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Looks like we may have one other person joining us. Okay, so we've got Nicole from Urban Ministries.
Hi, everybody. And I've got Shona here too. There we
Good
go.
morning.
All right. Well, first up on the agenda this morning is the minutes from the previous subcommittee meeting. There are a number of things that I have noticed that need to be corrected. Does anybody have anything that they want to go ahead and bring up for, to be corrected on there? So what I would recommend on this is there's just a number of things. Shay is not with us on the call yet. So what I would recommend is that we actually not approve these minutes and that we send corrections to Shay directly and then maybe revisit them for approval in the next meeting. In particular, given that we passed some changes during the last meeting to the benchmarks, I personally need a little more time to make sure that that is accurate, since after that, I went ahead and presented. So we want to make sure the public record is completely accurate on that. So that's what I would recommend, is that we hold off on approving them, and that if there are any changes that you feel need to be made, email Shay directly. Does that sound good? Any concerns? Okay. All right. Well, we'll move right along here. So the next item on the agenda is an update on the Durham Crisis Response Center COC project. So as you all know, as we've talked about the last couple meetings and in the HSAC, in our last HSAC meeting, we know that the Durham Crisis Response Center is having some issues with getting their project off the ground. So Lloyd's got an update here for us on any conversations that they have had with their staff. And Lloyd, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. Again, just some background on this. The Durham Crisis Response Center first received a continuum of care grant as part of the 2018 domestic violence bonus that was a part of the continuum of care competition that year. They received renewal grants in 2019 and in the 2020 competition. They were not eligible to apply for renewal funding in the 2021 competition, but they are eligible to seek renewal funding in the 2022 competition. The challenges related to implementing the project have been largely around two issues, some significant staff turnover, both in the executive leadership at the Durham Crisis Response Center, DCRC, as well as the use of a comparable database, comparable to the HMIS, that would allow the DCRC to provide required reports both to HUD and to the Durham Continuum of Care. We have been in communications with the leadership at DCRC. They currently have an interim executive director, Ashley Taylor Jacobs, I believe, and communications. I'm going to read a message from Colin Davis, our homeless system manager. And he reports as follows, that DCRC's interim executive director stated that she has their HMIS comparable database installed on her computer and is in the process of getting her staff connected and logged into the system to start data entry. She wasn't able to give a date as to when an APR, annual performance report, would be completed, but is aware that this is a high priority for us at community development and for HUD. DCRC has also decided that they will not be applying for HUD COC NOFA funds in the 2022 competition. The renewal funds for DCRC will be open to reallocation in the 2022 NOFO process. DCRC may apply for a DB bonus project in a future COC competition, or apply for funds in the future if there is another reallocation. As of now, they have elected to allow the COC to reallocate the funds. The renewal funds in 2020 that were awarded to DCRC were $167,147. So we're anticipating that that amount will be available for reallocation to another permanent housing project in the 2022 competition. The Policy and Planning Committee is responsible for recommending priorities for funding for COC funds, and the COC lead agency at the department, Community Development Department, has not yet formally made a recommendation to the Policy and Planning Committee as to what the priority for the use of COC bonus funds should be. But I think the Performance Management Committee, based on the willingness of DCRC to voluntarily allow for the reallocation of the funds, should certainly acknowledge the receipt of DCRC's decision and support it in its minutes, as well as support the reallocation in any communications to the Homeless Services Advisory Committee.
Okay, I was about to say questions, and we've got one. Sally, you're first up. Oh, I think you're muted.
Sometimes I have a hard time understanding things.
Sure.
So I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that DCRC is not going to apply for funding for this upcoming round.
Correct.
Am I hearing that there's also funding that they're not going to use that needs to be reallocated on a current contract?
No,
Okay.
they will have their existing 3 years of funds, right? The 2018 funds, they used most of them through the contract period that ended July 31st. They have the 2019 and the 2020 funds that will enable them to continue to implement that project through July of 2023. So over the next 15 months or so, they will be continuing to operate that project, but essentially closing it down by the end of July. Obviously, one of the things we will need to work on with them will be to transition project participants to other housing opportunities. Would not, yeah. So, okay.
And this is their rapid rehousing program.
This is a rapid rehousing project that was specifically targeted towards survivors of intimate partner violence or domestic violence. So the reallocated funds would be able to be used hopefully by a project that would start up in 2023. The renewal projects are seeking funding for contract periods that start in 2023. So they're existing funding of all of our renewals. So one other point to add, and that's a good question, Sally, with the reallocated funds of 167,000 and the permanent housing bonus that HUD typically makes available, Durham potentially would have approximately $250,000 to $260,000 available in the 2022 competition for a new project of some kind, or multiple new projects, right? So we haven't gotten any applications yet. We're still just beginning that process.
And so typically this committee or HSAC would say, here's what we would, we're going to set some priority for the population or type of program that would, that we would like to see, and then depending on the applications would be, would award funds accordingly.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, I definitely have a few myself.
Okay.
So it sounds like we're also dealing with two pots of money too, right? We're talking about regular COC funds, and then we're talking about the domestic violence bonus, right?
Correct.
So we can reallocate the COC funds, but we still, to get the domestic violence bonus, we're going to have a project that's willing to apply for that specifically, correct?
Our understanding is that the DCRC bonus funds are available for reallocation to any eligible COC activity. They do not need to be specifically used for survivors of domestic violence as the original grant was. Okay, so we don't know yet if there's going to be another domestic violence bonus in the 2022 competition. Still trying to get my overhead light on. Sorry about that. There we go. So again, it could be, our understanding is that it could be used for any COC eligible activity.
Right, and just to further clarify, so domestic violence bonus is something that is given in the first year that those funds are awarded. But after that first year, those funds just become part of your general COC renewal, and they're not distinguished from funds that were originally awarded as part of a bonus.
And then if I'm not mistaken, for the 2023 competition, for these funds to be reallocated, we're looking at scoring projects this fall, correct? Like we would under the normal fall scoring process.
Correct. We will be looking for new project applications, potentially expansions of existing COC funded projects. The basic activities generally are for, we could potentially reallocate it for HMIS activity, although I don't think the Community Development Department is intending to recommend reallocating any portion of these reallocated funds to HMIS, but that is a eligible COC activity. But so it could be reallocated, could be combined again with the permanent housing bonus into a project again around the $250,000 to $260,000 range into one project. That could be a completely new project from an organization that is not currently being funded, or it could be a permanent supportive housing or a rapid rehousing project from one of our existing renewal projects that would essentially expand that activity. Am I addressing that question, Jonathan?
No, you absolutely. You've done great. The other question that I have is, so we are waiting on, and I realize this is a Sharita question, but do we kind of have an idea of when performance, I'm sorry, not performance, that's us, policy and planning will make some recommendations on priorities, or is that maybe early fall, are we thinking?
We are thinking that policy and planning, according to my understanding, will be making a recommendation to the HSAC and the COC at the May 2022 meeting, so that as projects are, or as organizations are preparing to apply for COC funds, that we anticipate HUD will start the no-fault competition this year sometime in July, maybe August. Last year it was delayed slightly, but we're anticipating that HUD will, if it can, move the schedule of the competition to opening it in July with a application deadline around September 30th, the end of the federal fiscal year.
In terms of DCRC, agreeing to vacate these funds, what kind of gap, if any, are we anticipating in services, and particularly, obviously, housing services to our victims of domestic violence? Are we expecting a gap in services?
Well, that's a great question. The LGBTQ Center did receive a domestic violence bonus project in the 2021 competition of $284,000. Their target population is survivors of domestic violence, especially in the LGBTQ community population. Again, as I mentioned, as the DCRC project winds down its operations into 2023, we will need to work with them as a community to transition households that need continuing short to medium term rental assistance from a rapid rehousing project. We can transition those households to the LGBTQ project or one of the other rapid rehousing projects funded by the COC or funded by ESG funds as well. So what we will want to successfully transition them to, as if they're eligible for continued funding and need continuing rent assistance support.
What I'll add to that is I do not have any concern about an inability to serve a population experiencing intimate partner violence that needs rapid rehousing. People fleeing intimate partner violence are in the top priority group now for rapid rehousing generally for the COC. That's something that was not in place when DCRC first was funded, but is now. And so intimate partner violence survivors will continue to be one of the top groups getting access to general rapid rehousing services. And just a reminder that any rapid rehousing provider can serve survivors. It's not just a specialized provider. So I don't have any concerns that we won't be able to meet the needs of that population.
In your conversations with the staff of DCRC, have you all identified any, I guess, maybe concerns or needs that they may have in trying to maximize their performance, for the remainder of, the time, to make sure that, they don't leave any money on the table? Basically, is there anything we can do to help them be the best they can before, they get reallocated?
That's a great question. I think the challenges, from my perspective, been largely around, in the absence of a comparable database, we really don't have good clarity on what their implementation challenges have been. We have heard that they are serving households. They did spend $124,000 of their first year's grant of $154,000. So even though they did receive a contract extension of the initial term, I think it was extended for 3 months. So even within extension, they were not able to spend all of the initial grants. We are hopeful that they are spending the entire amount of the second year of funding, and they have indicated to us for the point in time count and the housing inventory count from January that they were serving as many as 11 households at one time, which we're assuming that they are continuing to implement the project within the challenges that they've had with the staff transitions that they've been experiencing, and we continue to provide the technical assistance they might need in terms of deciding who is an eligible recipient of the funds and those kind of things.
So what I'll add to that is that while we don't have data, I do have on the ground view on things from a coordinated entry perspective. And we have had a number of meetings with them where we talked about their challenges and offered support and tried to help them better understand kind of what was expected of a project like this and fit the model better. So from that standpoint, I do think we're making progress. We do have a number of clients who have been in housing search under that project for a very long time. And so, I have had extensive conversations with them about what the barriers are and how to better fit the rapid rehousing model in the housing search process. So I think we're doing all that to say, I think we're doing the best we can to support them. I don't think there's any guarantee that they won't leave money on the table with the current status of things, but I think we're doing everything we can to offer them support.
Well, thank you, Lloyd and Hanalea. You've certainly answered all of my questions. Anyone else have questions that they might like to ask on this topic? Great.
Again, before we leave the topic, Jonathan, I would recommend that the committee formally adopt a resolution thanking DCRC for applying for these funds initially, as well as implementing this project for 3 years and voluntarily making the funds available for COC reallocation in the 2022 competition. I think it's worthwhile to kind of go on record as a committee that we're grateful to DCRC for this work and continuing to encourage them in that good work.
Yeah, I'll be happy to make the motion to appreciate DCRC for their application for and implementation of this housing project, and that, you know, and acceptance of the relinquishing of the funds moving forward, or however that should be phrased.
So we have a motion from Sally Wilson to express our gratitude to the Durham Crisis Response Center for applying for these funds, implementing the project, and their willingness to surrender and have their funds reallocated. Is that pretty accurate? Do we have a second?
Hey, this is Alicia. I second.
Okay, so we have a second from Alicia Thompson. Any further discussion? All right, if for those who are eligible to vote, if you will vote in the chat box, you can vote yes, no, or abstain. Okay, I think just about everybody has voted. Dr. Birch, did you want to vote? Okay,
I better abstain.
abstain. Okay, if you'll just put abstain in the box. All right, motion does carry. What I will plan to do is during the next HSAC meeting, in which performance and management has the opportunity to provide a committee update, I will publicly thank DCRC on behalf of the committee and recognize the good work they've done.
Thanks.
All right, thank you all. Okay, so next up on the agenda is review and discussion on the scoring instrument for new projects. I do apologize, I got that out late to you all. That is completely my fault. I overlooked it when I was preparing the agenda initially, so I do apologize for that. Lloyd, I will turn that over to you for presentation if you want to lead us on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't know. Let's see. I'll share my screen or try to.
I can also do it as well if you would like, if that would make it easier.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Would it, at this time, invite the committee to, between now and the May meeting of the committee, review the scorecard for new project applications. Again, we will use this as part of our evaluation of any new projects. Again, we are anticipating that with the reallocated funds from DCRC as well as the permanent housing bonus, we will have approximately $250,000 or more available for distribution, or at least recommendation to HUD for new projects. And the only area of the scorecard that I am seeing that would need a modest update would be around the cost of beds in the efficiency area. But if members of the committee do want to recommend or have questions about any of the particular questions and want to suggest revisions or updates or additions to the scorecard, hopefully the committee would adopt a scorecard in the May competitions, so that as projects begin to prepare their full project applications for the 2022 competition later this summer and into the fall, they can know what the scorecard is, as well as we do offer some bonus points for projects that submit a self-evaluation of the scorecard. So question 25 that you're seeing on your screen, the numbers for the cost per bed for rapid rehousing, tenant-based rent assistance in permanent supportive housing, or project-based permanent supportive housing, those numbers would be revised slightly higher based on the awards that our renewal projects received in the 2021 competition. HUD does provide some modest increases for operating funds for project-based permanent supportive housing, as well as adjust the amount of rent assistance available for tenant-based rent assistance, as well as rapid rehousing rent assistance based on fair market rent amounts and adjustments. So those typically have an increase every year. So those, beyond adjusting those numbers, I'm not again aware of any other questions on the scorecard that we may want to adjust, but then we can look at other areas if the committee so chooses.
Lloyd, I have a question.
Good.
Why are rapid rehousing costs so much higher than permanent supportive housing? Is that because it's you're renting on the open market?
Well, that's a good question. I think some of it has to do with in terms of particularly our COC funding. Would need to look at the project overall, but let me research that question for a bit more between now and May. My initial thought is that there's probably more funding in our rapid rehousing projects for supportive services than there may be in our tenant-based rent assistance projects. But let me confirm that. It's a great question.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I would have thought it would be the exact opposite, right? That rapid rehousing would be cheaper.
Well, and to be clear, again, this number is simply a cost per bed.
Sure.
Now,
yeah.
With rapid rehousing, we anticipate that the cost per positive housing exit, which is what we evaluate when in the renewal scorecard, is a bit different, because we would anticipate, for example, that maybe rapid rehousing projects provide only 6 or 9 months of assistance on average to people exiting, where somebody in a permanent supportive housing project would be receiving tenant-based rent assistance for a longer period of time. So the actual cost per person observed would continue to be less in a rapid rehousing project, because they don't a lot of times receive the rent assistance for as long a period of time.
What other questions do we have? Or comments?
Another comment I would make to the committee is to encourage organizations that are not currently receiving COC funds to consider applying for these funds, especially with the reallocated funds that are being made available this year. In the kind of summary section, if you want to scroll down to that, Jonathan, we do award 12 bonus points in the bonus points for applications from organizations that currently receiving COC funds. There's 12 bonus points that are eligible for new organizations in the scorecard. So that can be helpful to new organizations. So we encourage. We did open the pre-application period at the beginning of this week, and the pre-application period for COC funds runs through May 24th. We have our first workshop, pre-application workshop next Friday, April 22nd, and hope that we will have some new organizations potentially interested in applying for these funds. So spread the word.
Along those lines, would it be appropriate to announce the reallocation of funds, perhaps at an HSAC meeting, so that we can kind of spread the word? I mean, I know I've seen the emails about, that have come out, but would something even more public than that at an HSAC meeting be something that would be helpful?
Sure.
Okay.
HUD is very interested in seeing that we are letting the broader community know about the availability of these funds, and we're not the only ones interested in having new organizations receive funds. HUD is as well.
Okay. What other questions or comments do we have? And again, I know not a lot of short notice here with my email yesterday. So,
and that's fine. I mean, again, I initially put it on the agenda so that the committee can review the scorecard between now and May, and we can finalize it hopefully and adopt it in the at the May meeting. So.
Well, I would suggest then, if members have comments, concerns as you review it, email Lloyd directly, and that way he can incorporate feedback, answer any questions, and we'll prepare to bring this up at at May's subcommittee meeting, possibly for a vote. Well, hopefully for a vote if we feel ready. Does that sound like a reasonable plan?
Sounds good.
All right. All right. All right. Well, we'll move on then. We'll end our time on this particular item, and we'll move to the last item here. And I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, excuse me, not the last item, second to last. So during, of course, at the last HSAC meeting, we have the HSAC adopted the performance standards that the committee recommended. And so one of the things that we need to do perhaps as a committee is to talk about how we're going to implement those standards, how we're going to try to measure our projects. And I'll turn that back over to you, Lloyd, if you want to lead that discussion as well.
Oh, you were doing a fine job leading it, Jonathan, but I will simply say that from the lead agency perspective, we'd like to hear suggestions from the committee as to what the agency should be doing to share these standards or make them benchmarks more a part of the life of the COC as we move forward. I have not yet scheduled a kind of virtual meeting or webinar to review the standards with our COC, with our homeless housing system programs and projects. I will be prepared to do that hopefully in the near future with the support of the committee. Again, before I do that, I wanted to get some input from the committee as to what your thoughts are as to what would be most effective in kind of publicizing the new benchmarks and what we should be doing. My understanding is that at some point moving forward, we would want to evaluate all of the projects that are listed on our homeless housing housing inventory chart or count that we submit to HUD annually along with the point in time count. We'd want to evaluate the projects at least on these benchmarks, as well as the street outreach projects that are currently using the HMIS. But I'd like to hear from the committee as to what you would like to see particularly the committee and or the lead agency do to really make these benchmarks something that our homeless housing projects are paying attention to and seeking to hold themselves accountable for as we move forward.
Well, one question that I would ask is, I know that prior to last month when the amendments and the updates were updated, what's been done in the past, since they were initially adopted in 2014?
Yeah, I think for several years, up to 2014, we did have a dashboard on the old COC website, Durham Opening Doors, that matched SNARS, a colleague of mine in the department, ours, I should say, in the department, was updating regularly, and we reviewed the data somewhat regularly with the HSAC, with Matthew's departure. We did not in the department have the capacity to continue to update the performance records as well as we might have liked to. I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, we've not done any kind of public evaluation based on the prior benchmarks. Where we have used the benchmarks has been in the city's contracting for the use of entitlements, emergency solutions grant funds, as well as we have used the prior benchmarks, certainly as part of the scorecards for the renewal of COC funds, as the committee may be aware of. But that's, Hanalea, if you have any other thoughts on that question from your perspective to share, or Ruby as well.
Just in terms of how we share, I'm sorry, what was the question?
How we've used the prior benchmarks in the work of evaluating projects.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you, Lloyd. I don't think they have been used that extensively beyond our contracting process.
So if I'm not mistaken, usually I think in the governance charter, once a year, the committee kind of prepares sort of a report to present to the larger HSAC about the performance. Am I remembering that correctly? Like kind of like an end of year report kind of deal?
I would defer to Hanalea
Okay.
on that in terms of what's in the governance charter.
Is the question, Jonathan, whether we have a annual performance report?
Yeah, so I'm where I'm going with this is, you know, at the very least, you know, could we, you know, kind of prepare, you know, I realize we're always scoring and there's just constant, you know, between funding and all, but, you know, some sort of, I guess you could say, annual report to present to the larger HSAC where we are, you know, running the data against these benchmarks and, you know, essentially giving a report to HSAC on them.
Sure. Yeah. So there's nothing in the governance charter to my memory that requires that, but there's nothing also that says that you can't do that, right? I mean, there is more general statements that this group is supposed to be monitoring COC provider performance and reporting concerns to HSAC. So I definitely think it would be appropriate to do some kind of regular monitoring and report. The fact that it's not required by governance doesn't preclude it.
Okay. Other questions or comments out there? And I am sharing my screen, so if anybody wants to see a particular set of benchmarks that, you know, that were adopted last month by HSAC, just let me know and I can go to them.
We did kind of an annual kind of performance report. What's the committee's sense based on kind of the annual workflow of the committee and the departments? What's the best time of the year where we could potentially do that? You try to do it between I think maybe Andrea, I think, joined the call from NCCH, our HMIS provider. They're busy many times with reporting to HUD. The HUD reporting season, Andrea, is what, kind of November through April? We tried to do it outside of that time period.
I know Andrea's with us. She joined. Let's see if maybe she had to step away for a moment.
So sorry, I double muted myself. Apologies.
Okay.
I responded. Yes, so absolutely right, Lloyd. Yeah, November through April is really when we're working on reporting, and it would make sense to report the data after submission. So submission for system performance measures and longitudinal system analysis in February. We expect that to continue in the future, and then PIT and HIG is submitted in April.
Yeah, the challenge in my mind is going to be to find a time where between the HMIS team as well as the community development team, we can really take a month or two to identify a time where we could pull together, you know, APRs, annual performance reports, or perhaps ESG papers for ESG funded projects. Again, the intention of these benchmarks is that they are applicable to all of our projects, whether no matter what source of funding they're receiving, projects that are, you know, the VA funded projects, as well as projects that are funded in other mechanisms. So I know Sally Wilson's a member of the committee, so, you know, homeless care transitions would be evaluated as well. So any projects, and as well as our the Durham Crisis Response Center's emergency shelter program, which we need to get, you know, annual performance report from their comparable database so that we can incorporate them as well. I'm thinking we could try to get it going to evaluate the fiscal year performance from July through June, and we try to get it done somewhere between concurrently with our COC and ESG grant writing period, or shortly thereafter that, so that we could get it done eventually by the end of the year, end of the calendar year for the previous fiscal year. But we'll have to see what capacity allows. But I will try to get a virtual meeting scheduled to do a webinar to review all of the benchmarks with our community partners, so they're to make sure they're aware of them, to make sure and that they are aware that we will be beginning again to evaluate their performance and publicizing their performance to the HSAC. But I would also, invite any members of the committee that are interested to assist us at the COC lead agency in that work of informing the community about them, because it is not just the lead agency that recommended these benchmarks, but they're really the COC through the HSAC in particular. And so the message that I think we want to convey to the projects and the organizations is that these are not benchmarks of the community development department, but they are the benchmarks of the continuum of care.
So Lloyd, I would be happy to be on that webinar that you do, as the chair and representing the committee. So
Great.
I'd be happy to at least do that. I do have some more comments, but I've also been speaking a lot, and I want to make sure that others have had a chance. So are there other comments, questions? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, then I'm going to jump back in here. So I know one of the things that we have sort of talked about off and on is maybe doing some more, I guess maybe smaller scale monitoring, something more periodic. And so in terms of applying these, I'm sure, we could certainly, if we wanted to on a scorecard, add a question about, are they meeting the benchmarks, put a point value. But, aside from that, I would be interested in maybe establishing something that, that has precedent. I know we, with the funding schedule, there's a certain time of year where we've got to evaluate certain applications with ESG and COC. So I'm wondering if, and you mentioned some of this, if there's a way to maybe insert in our work, as part of the calendar, a particular time in the HSAC year where we do have the ability to maybe do some evaluations using the benchmarks. I will say, I am, familiar with HMIS, but I have never held a license myself. So I'm also assuming that, community development as the lead agency has the ability to just kind of generate reports, as needed. And that may or may not be true. So, it sounds like, we maybe have to figure out capacity here. And I personally would like to maybe see something, that we put something in place that would have some precedent that, every time of year we do a particular review using these benchmarks.
I mean, that seems like a, reasonable proposal to me. And it seems like, one of the value of, I think about the benchmarks is not so much, a grading, agencies on the performance as a, working together as a community, understanding where as a community, we're falling short, understanding if the issue is the benchmarks or, you know, like understanding what the issues are, because it's usually, you know, most of the time not agency specific, but has to do with the whole system performance.
Mhm. I would agree. I think that's well said, and it is about partnership and improving performance.
Want to chime in and say absolutely, and the data center would definitely look to support the committee and POC lead agency in doing that. So I think there's also value in having that regularity, because we can build expertise in the subcommittee, in the community, around what do these benchmarks mean? How do you look at these? And in HSAC as well. So excited about that.
What other comments do we have? Lloyd, when do you think that webinar might happen? In which you know, you review the benchmarks. Well, we as you know, lead agency and whoever of us could be, you know, president and part of that webinar. When do you think that might be something that could happen?
Let's try to get something scheduled before the end of May.
Okay.
We can put our heads together, Jonathan, and see what works.
Absolutely. I think that would be great.
Okay. I'll follow up with you on that.
Okay. All right. Looks like Alicia's got to jump off there. Well, it certainly sounds like, you know, there's lots of room to maybe think more about this too. I would say committee, think about, you know, other ideas here of how we can incorporate these, and you know, certainly if you have other thoughts, you know, as you think about it, email Lloyd, email myself, and we'll see if we can't, you know, try to incorporate them.
Thank you.
And oh, go ahead.
No, thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I'll go ahead and bring this portion of the agenda to a close. And then we will move to the last item here, which would be a coordinated entry report from Hanalea. And I have to say, Hanalea, I'm thrilled that we're giving you like half an hour as opposed to the usual 10 to 5 minutes that seems to happen. So you've got lots of time, and thanks for presenting ahead of time here.
Hey, Jonathan, do we have anything else to vote on?
No, nothing else that I'm aware of, unless somebody makes a motion. So there's nothing planned.
Okay. I have to get to another meeting. I'm sorry, something just came up.
All right, no problem. Thanks, Dr. Birch.
Thank you. All right.
Jonathan, I am very sorry, but I did not know I had a coordinated entry report due to y'all this month.
Okay.
I apologize. Did I just do one last month, but it was so late that one was due the very next month? Is that what happened?
Well, I think we we kept bumping you, and then the other thing is, by the time we got you to the point where we could have you do the last one, it was time for the new one.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think I got confused because of that. I'm very sorry, Jonathan. I can prepare one for y'all next month, but I am not prepared to do one today.
Sure, no problem. I apologize. I should have followed up with you personally on that. So you know what, no problem. I'm sure nobody will object to a meeting that ends half an hour early. So we can have you back next month.
Thank you for understanding.
All right. Any other business that the committee wishes to bring up at this time? All right. Okay,
Just
well,
Jonathan, what is the date of y'all's next meeting to make sure that I will be here? Because I am going to be out of town for several weeks.
sure. Give me 1 second. I'll pull up the calendar.
May 12th.
Yeah, May 12th, 10 a.m.
Okay, yes. I will be here and I will be ready. Sorry about that.
No, no worries, no worries. I think, we're all trying to do as many things as we can as possible, and yeah, not a problem. So thanks, Hanalea. All right, and if somebody will make a motion to adjourn followed by a second, we'll bring it to a close and wish everybody a happy weekend.
A motion.
All right, motion by Danielle Butler to adjourn. If we could have a second.
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Shantae. All right, committee, we are adjourned. We'll see you at the full HSAC meeting. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.